I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Gordon Chang of theforbes.com and The Daily is here with me. Gordon, a news item from a Chinese magazine, the one-child policy, reporting that there is an investigation underway in Hunan province for abducted children. The suspicion here is that they're not only abducted, they're being sold into adoption in the United States, Europe, even Poland. It's looking at one particular county, Longgu County, where 20 children were forcibly taken away, so the report goes, from their families and sold overseas. Is this a startling headline for what is in the Chinese equivalent of the supermarket magazines, or is this the tip of something that's been going on for a long time?
I actually think this is the tip of something that has occurred for a very long time. China has a one-child policy, which means more or less you get one child. If you have more than one child, there's going to be a fine. And what happened in this case was that after 2000, people in this county, if they had more than one child, couldn't pay the fine. The officials took the child away. Right. I mean, in the past, the one-child officials, they merely took and destroyed your home. They just took your home and they destroyed it. Now they're actually taking children away. And this story, which has appeared now not only in the Chinese media, but in the BBC as well, essentially says that officials went into some of these homes and they took the one child. So there was no violation.
Where's the child?
Well, these children now are scattered around the world. And one of these children that was supposedly just a one child who shouldn't have been taken away is now someplace in the United States.
So that these are Chinese government officials, provincial officials, trafficking in human beings.
Absolutely, because the officials made money when they took the children that they abducted and sent them to the adoption agency. And then the adoption agency made money when these children were placed abroad. So essentially, these kids are being placed from one official to another. And along the way, people are making money off of this.
Now, you've told me over the years, Gordon, that the Chinese people as collective will take a lot of grief from the government because they are busy about their lives. But there's always a snapping point, right? That's what the riots are about. That's what all of a sudden the outburst because some factory owner's gone too far with pollution or theft. Is this a snapping point? This
could very well be because, you're dealing with something which goes fundamental to a family. You're taking children away with no authority. I mean, it's horrific. I mean, the one-child policy has done a number of things. It's not only the abduction of children, it's also, forced sterilizations, forced abortions, and the killing of children just after they're born. This is a horrible thing. And Chinese leaders know it's been going on, and they do nothing to stop it.
They're either powerless to stop it, or what we have here is misgovernance at a colossal scale. A detail here, Chinese property sales figures. A lot of numbers, they're numbing about everything growing, more space all the time. But you point me to this item in the Chinese property report. Chinese population grew to 1.34 billion in 2010, a sharp rise in those over 60. What's the significance of that?
Well, China's growing old before it's growing rich. What's even worse is that in the 0 to 14 group, the number fell from 2000 to 2010 from something like 22.5% of the population down to 16.5%. This is important because the 0 to 14 group are tomorrow's workers, and the number of workers in China is going to peak sometime between 2013 and 2016. I think pretty much closer to the 2014 point. And that really means that there's going to be a real wholesale change in the Chinese economy because labor is going to become much more expensive.
And also that means that they haven't got the future that, say, India has, because India will stay young. That's not only the workers, that's the consumer class for around the year 2050.
Well, around 2050, India will have about 350 million more people than China. Someplace around 2025, maybe even a little bit earlier, for the first time in centuries, China will not be the most populous nation in the world. And India is going to end up in about 2 decades with about 200 million more workers than China. That really means that China has a very high demographic barrier because although demography is not destiny, it does create limits to what a society can do.
Over the last 2 days, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of the Treasury have been meeting with their opposites, vice premier, in Washington. Why?
That's the Strategic and Economic Dialogue. It's the third time that this particular mechanism, this dialogue mechanism, has met during the Obama administration. Basically, the Obama administration is very interesting. They have really put an emphasis on human rights for the first time, which is very, very good. There have been some agreements. Some of them seem to be important, some of them not. We're going to see the significance of this pretty soon. But essentially, we're continuing to talk to the Chinese, where really we should be taking an opposite tack, largely because, the Chinese, they just go out and they do things that are undercutting good order in the international community. And instead of trying to impose some limits, what we're doing is we're trying to talk to the Chinese to try to get them back. And it's really not working because things are getting worse over time.
The president said that it was said that the president underscored his support for universal human rights. The vice president and the secretary of state both said that China's security crackdown threatens the country's long-term stability. Now, lecturing the Chinese Communist Party seems a fool's game. So, who is this for? The American people? They told them what to do. They've done their work. Is that what listen, bad guy. We know you're a bad guy. Cut it out.
I think it's part of that, but also I think they're trying to signal to the Chinese leaders a change. Because in February 2009, Secretary of State Clinton said that human rights was not going to interfere with more pressing issues that we had with the Chinese. And once she said that, the Chinese became much more belligerent because they interpreted that as a sign of weakness. I think what the administration is doing is saying to the Chinese, we're not weak. We are going to talk to you about human rights. So there are multiple audiences here.
I understand Mr. Wang, Vice Premier, said that American people were simple. Is that got a fancy word in Chinese?
It's just an insult. Basically, what he's saying is that we Chinese now are so powerful that we're going to come to your capital and we are going to insult American people wholesale. This is just, when Charlie Rose heard that, or when Timothy Geithner heard that, because it was during a Charlie Rose joint interview, Geithner just should have said, I'm sorry, but you Chinese people are arrogant bastards, and I'm not going to put up with it.
And instead, Mr. Geithner was extremely polite and tried to explain it away.
He's simple. Treasury Secretary Geithner is simple.
So what we have here is that the takeaway from the Vice Premier's visit to Washington is they're easy. They're easy.
Well, Geithner is easy, but that's Wang Qishan got it right with Geithner, but with the rest of us, we Americans know what's going on. We need better China policies.
Gordon Chang of Forbes.com and The Daily. I'm John Batchelor.